Jesus freak here. My teeth are mostly doing fine still. Still taking some Tylenol for some dull headaches and other issues. Had a bit of a dispute come up in another channel. And this was one where the person was factually wrong but couldn't be persuaded. See, he was trying to claim that the Douay version was better because it was closer to the Septuagint. Because he believes, it's a fair assessment and to say maybe the Masoretic text could have been corrupted by the Pharisees. It's possible. Thing is, the idea that it's closer to the Septuagint than the King James or other Protestant Bibles. Outside of Psalms, where that is in fact true, it's patently false. And I gave him a couple particular examples. One of the problems was, I gave him a number of translations that could be used as evidence. He's like, oh, no, that one's a scholar's that's, as it happens, he tried to poo-poo away all the translations where, or as it happens, this is a translation. This is the only Septuagint-based translation for as much as it has or doesn't have. Actual Septuagint basis. It was translated under the auspices of an Orthodox Christian seminary. So we're not talking, skeptical scholars like the NRSV or whatever. But I pointed to these particular verses as examples. It's going to be a bit hard to find things because the order of books in this is a bit weird. I'm going to quote Deuteronomy 32:8 here. And this is from the SAAS. When the Most High divided the nations, when he scattered the sons of Adam, he set the boundaries of the nations by the number of God's angels. I am going to reference the same. And I'm using an NKJV rather than a KJV because it's supposed to be, the SAAS is supposed to be close to the NKJV. It's not going to matter. The wording's going to be pretty close. Okay, same verse. When the Most High divided their inheritance to the nations, when he separated the sons of Adam, he set the boundaries of the people according to the number of the children of Israel. Now, this is a Challoner version. Most people who talk about the Douay are probably talking about the Challoner, not the actual Douay. But as they're both direct translations of the Vulgate, and in particular Clementine or near Clementine texts, when the Most High divided the nations, when he separated the sons of Adam, he appointed the bounds of people according to the number of the children of Israel. Wait a minute. That agrees with the Masoretic-based NKJV and not the Septuagint-based SAAS. I'm going to point to what in a KJV would be 1 Samuel 13:1. And I'm going to start at the verse before so you can see what happened. It says, but if you still do wickedly, you shall be joined together in death, both you and your king. And then the chapter starts. Saul chose for himself 3,000 men from the men of Israel. 2,000 were with Saul in Michmash and on the mountain of Bethel, and 1,000 were with Jonathan in Gibeah of Benjamin. He sent the rest of the people away, each man to his dwelling. I don't have a lot of space to work here. Okay, I'm going to start a verse early again so you can see what happened. But if you still do wickedly, you shall be swept away, both you and your king. Again, this is an NKJV. Saul reigned 1 year, and when he had reigned 2 years over Israel, Saul chose for himself 3,000 men of Israel. 2,000 were with Saul in Michmash and in the mountains of Bethel, and 1,000 were with Jonathan in Gibeah of Benjamin. The rest of the people he sent away, every man to his tent. There's about half a sentence missing there in the Septuagint text. So, what's the Challoner say? Again, the chapter ends, chapter 4 ends, but if you still do wickedly, both you and your king shall perish together. Saul was a child of 1 year when he began to reign, and he reigned 2 years over Israel. Okay, that sounds a little weird. I'll explain that in a minute. And Saul chose him 3,000 men of Israel, and 2,000 were with Saul in Michmash and in Mount Bethel, and 1,000 with Jonathan in Gibeah of Benjamin, and the rest of the people he sent back every man to their dwellings. This, of course, is using Latin forms of the names, so some of them are different. I'll explain the verse 1. The Vulgate actually translated this verse exactly as it stood in the Hebrew at the time. And in fact, most people are going to tell you, if you look at the Hebrew, that's basically what it says. It says, as Saul was a son of years when he began to reign, and he reigned years over Israel, that the numbers are missing. This entire verse isn't there in Greek. But not only is it there in Hebrew, it's there in Latin too. And I found another example while I was doing some stuff earlier. This one I'm going to grab a King James to explain. And I'm going to do it in sort of the opposite order. This is Hosea 6:5. Therefore have I hewed them by the prophets. I have slain them by the words of my mouth, and thy judgments are as the light that goeth forth. And back to the Challoner. The same verse. For this reason I have hewed them by the prophets. I have slain them by the words of my mouth, and thy judgments shall go forth as the light. More or less the same interpretation. This one's slightly different. He says, therefore I have cut off your prophets. I have slain them with the words of my mouth, and my judgment shall go forth as the light. It has some slight differences, but the Latin text agrees almost exactly with the Hebrew, and agrees with the Hebrew in both places where it differs from here. Around the time that Jerome was working on the Vulgate, he decided he wanted to go back to the original languages. Sound familiar? William Tyndale? Martin Luther? He took a lot of flack for that. Because at the time, a lot of people believed that the Greek translation was itself inspired by God. And there were a lot of differences. You'll find there are very few places where the Vulgate and the Septuagint agree against the Hebrew. Outside of Psalms, it's another story. As it happens, Jerome did 3 translations of the Psalms. One was a revision of an earlier translation. The second was a new translation from Greek. The third was a new translation from Hebrew. The second is the one you're going to find in the Vulgate, although the third was probably the one he wanted in the Vulgate. So when he claims that the Vulgate's closer to the Septuagint, or that the Challoner or the Douay is closer to the Septuagint, outside of Psalms, I can tear that down easily. Jesus freak out.